Hey everybody, welcome to the Mr. Movie Show. I'm Steve.
And I'm Jay.
And today we're going to talk about a guy and his dog named John Wick. It's going to be a keanue episode.
Right, and this is a sort of continuation, or sort of pulling on the theme of The Matrix.
Yeah, well, we're...
Keanu
Reeves. Well, the reason why I kind of started to, the reason why I started doing this episode, or wanted to do this episode, was I was like, I've always wanted to talk about John Wick. It's like kind of like on my list of movies to tackle,
right,
kind of thing. And then since you and I started doing this podcast together, I figured, let's do a John Wick,
right.
talk. So, I kind of decided why not talk about John Wick. So before we start, what was your thoughts when you heard like the title John Wick, or did you like kind of go in kind of blind, or did you kind of know the
went
trailer?
I think sort of blind when I went to saw it. I can't remember if I saw it in theaters or not. I think I did see the first one in theaters.
The first one in theaters.
Yeah, I went in sort of blind without really watching the trailer, and I was just really impressed. Did you watch the trailer first? Or?
Well, I actually saw it on an honest trailer.
Okay.
On Screen
so
Junkies.
Spoilers.
Well, kind of. The way I look at spoilers is I feel like I don't mind if somebody spoils it for me, because I like to figure out how it, I don't mind that the dominoes are like being set up or falling down. I just want to know how they were all set up. I can go into a movie and go, okay, how is it that, like when we talked about Scream, you watch it a couple times, you go, okay, how is Billy the killer in this scene versus, that kind of stuff. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's sort of like I just sort of like found this, and actually, I think it was a lot of people were talking about just how badass this movie was, and it is one of those movies that brings back the action film. It deals with, like it brings sort of that, because I feel like with a lot of action films, like The Matrix, where it was just sort of like so, like about style and stuff.
Right.
John Wick, really takes its time to kind of move up and kind of do, it's kind of like, what I like about it is it sort of like is about, and it has its own mythology and it works.
Right.
The director,
I think you said it was like the stunt coordinator for the
Matrix.
It was
one of the stunt coordinators for the Matrix. Right. He also did. I
feel like you can really tell with just how good the action scenes are in this movie.
Okay, here I got it. So it was directed by Chad Starlin, and David Lynch had an uncredited role.
Wow.
I don't know if you know David Lynch.
I know, like he's done a lot of like sort of strange
stuff. He directed
stuff.
Deadpool. He acted in Deadpool 2. He acted in Born Supremacy. He actually was a producer for the John Wick series, and he also directed the Fast and the Furious spin-off film Hobbs and Shaw and Deadpool 2.
Well, is this like David Lynch, like Eraserhead, or am I thinking of someone else?
Leach, David. Okay, never mind, not David.
I was like,
Leach. I'm sorry, audience. It's David Leach.
Okay, I was like,
Lynch is not the same.
All right, yeah, it's sort of a different genre.
David Leach.
Okay.
David Lynch is the director of Eraserhead.
Okay, yeah, David Lynch is a little bit more.
It's Lynch.
Yeah, okay. David Leach.
Leach.
Okay.
Yeah, David Leach. And he directed Deadpool. That's gotta be compared. Yeah. But anyway, so I kind of looked at this film, and it was sort of like, Keanu Reeves. I was kind of like, okay, how is this going to work when I first saw it? I just kind of heard it was like, he's an assassin, he's a badass and that kind of stuff. And when I watched, and then, now I watched it, I watched all three of them in a weekend just to kind of get me refreshed. So I guess you want to start by telling people what the story is? Or you want to go into
like real basics first, or you want to go sort of more slow?
Let's go slow and kind of, or just sort of you build it up.
Right.
But
Yeah. So this.
I don't.
Yeah. So this movie sort of starts in sort of like preludes to the future, and he sort of like you see this like black SUV sort of like crash into something, and see Neo sort of crawls out.
John Wick.
Yeah, John Wick. Or Neo,
yeah.
or he sort of crawls out and he's like bleeding. He's like props himself up against like a wall, and like he pulls out his phone.
And there's a
and he has like a little video of his wife.
Yeah. And
then it sort of cuts back to the past, and like I think maybe do you want to take over from there? I think maybe he's like at the funeral.
I think I think what happens is he wakes up or he wakes up. Does he goes to the funeral first, right?
Yeah, I think we like go.
I just saw this. Yeah.
No, I think we go. So he like we're sort of in the future. He's like crashes his car. He pulls out. He's bloody. He's on his phone, and then we sort of like snap. And I think now we're at the funeral.
And then William. So he's at the funeral and he's kind of getting ready for the. So the funeral is happening. Its progression. Right. And William Dafoe, who was Green Goblin in Spider-Man, shows up and gives him his condolences.
Right.
And
his
he
name
says,
is Marcus. Right?
Marcus, that's right. Yeah, Marcus. And he's like, I'm sorry for, your trouble. And for your thing, my condolences. And he's like going, he kind of tells him about like, life is beautiful and that kind of thing. Or life is beautiful, and he can consult him, and he's like going, see you, Marcus,
right?
And they drive off, and then we kind of see the aftermath of sort of the funeral.
Yeah, I think there's like an after party thing.
I don't know.
No, I think it was. These were like a little like a bunch of friends are over the house. But you see like sort of like
I guess is what it's called.
You sort of see like John Wick sort of not really interacting with a lot of. He's just sort of like sad and in black. And then I think fast forward to the next day, and then suddenly I think he gets a package.
He gets a package the day
after the funeral.
The day after the funeral, and it's a little puppy named Daisy. And that's what I liked about this film is that I think if you went in completely blind, it really feels at the first couple minutes, it was sort of this, this sort of like his wife dies, he's given a puppy, and you could take that into
and
like
the puppy's so cute,
and it's just about him coping with the death of his wife and stuff. Well, which he does, but that could have been the whole movie, and not even be, and so he gets the dog and he like feeds the dog cereal because he's like, I'll get you some kibble later, and he goes into and so like that night the dog will sleep on the sleep on the bed, and he couldn't get the dog to sleep. So the next day he goes out to his car and takes the dog for the ride.
Right.
And he stops to get gas.
Right.
And these three Russians were they Russian?
Yeah, well, they're part of the Russian mafia. I guess
we don't really know, but
they're part of the Russian mafia.
But like they're just hanging out.
Right.
And they're listening to like this really like loud, rap music.
Right.
And they go get gas, and he's like going, and he starts to make the
and then Theon Greyjoy comes over and is like, oh, that's a nice car.
Is that the actor or is that the?
That's not the actor. That's the
character's name.
Yeah, he played Theon Greyjoy in Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay.
I think his name in the movie is Yusef.
Yusef, yeah. And so he basically like.
I think his actor was Alfie Allen.
Alfie Allen.
Yeah.
And Alfie Allen, and he was in he was also in Jojo Rabbit. I don't know if you saw that movie.
Oh, I did. I guess I don't remember who he was.
He played Finkel. Does that name sound familiar?
Oh, I think maybe he's one of like the more.
And he was also in The Predator.
I don't know if I've seen The Predator.
That's like the last one of the series.
No, I haven't seen it.
Anyway, so he and a bunch of his friends are just are hanging out, and they see his car, and he makes small talk, and he's like going, how much for the, and he starts he kind of like says, "Oh, it's a nice car. How much for the car?" And
John
he's
says
like,
it's not
and
for
John
sale.
says it's not for sale. And he says, "Oh, you got a cute puppy. You know, I love dogs." And then he says, and then he says in German, everyone
in
has,
Russian.
or in Russian, he says everyone has a price. And he says, but not me. Well, and then John knows Russian and says, but not this, or everyone has a price, bitch. And he says, but not this bitch. And he basically drives off.
Yeah.
And then the next day, or
that
night, he's getting ready for, he gets ready for bed. And then let's just get into it.
Yeah.
They break into his house.
I know.
And it is so horrible. They beat the dog.
I know. It was like the first night. He's like, "Oh, you can sleep in the bed tonight."
Yeah.
He's like wakes up because his dog Daisy has gotten up to like bark at something.
Yeah. And then like he gets beaten. And what I like about it is that you don't, it is so tragic at this moment in the film because he like hits. He basically like he gets up.
Yeah.
These guys in like ski masks and like things beat him with a bat.
Right.
And you're like, no, John. And then the puppy comes in and then they kill the puppy.
Yeah.
And you hear the and
it's quite sad.
It's quite sad. And then they steal his car. They drive off to the impound lot.
Right.
Where they have John Leguizamo from one of the best, greatest.
I think they also
greatest film, Super Mario Brothers and the Pest, and he was in a lot of different films, but he's really good. He's sitting there and he's like going, he's sitting there and he's like going, how much, or he's saying like. How much? Or he's saying, So he drives up and says, "Look what we got." That's what
Theon Greyjoy.
Theon Greyjoy said. Yusuf says is like, "Look what we got." And he's like, "I want new license plates, new plates, and new thing, and make this tight." And then he said, John Leguizamo says, "Where'd you get that car?" He says, "Who cares? Who cares? Some punk with like thing." It's like.
So
that's
he
John Wick's car. I mean, you're kind of like, okay, it's John Wick's car. He's like, and then he talks about, who cares? Like, and he's talking to, he saes, who cares who we got on kill his dog? And he said, you killed his dog. And he says,
then he asks you like, did you kill him?
Did you kill him? And he's like, no, but we fucked up his. He's like, oh, you fucked up his dog. You fucked up his dog. And he says, and then. One of his guys gets like starts saying, pulls a gun on John Leguizamo.
Oh yeah, after he punches
Theon,
right.
And he says, because he punches him, and he's like, and then like he pulls a gun on him, and he's like, oh, you're gonna come into my shop and pull a gun on me,
right?
And you're just like, and he's just so great, and then we have like. I'm trying to think. Then they say, get out of here,
right.
And they leave, and he gets a phone call from the father, Vigo, the head honcho, and Vigo's like, I heard you struck my son, and John Leguizamo says, yeah, well, he shouldn't have stolen John Wick's car, and he's like, oh.
Yeah, just hangs up the phone.
And he hangs up the phone. And I love that, just because you kind of feel like...
just building into like a myth behind.
But what I love about it is that he's like, oh, and that's the thing, is like, because what I like about where we're going, as the movie progresses, it's sort of like, if you didn't see it, didn't watch any ads, you're kind of... That's the surprising thing, is you find out, oh... He's an assassin now.
Yeah.
So, anyway, he goes through the... So he says... so he comes back...
I think John Wick comes and goes to the
John.
car.
Yeah, John Wick goes to
He's looking
see
for his
John
car.
Leguizamo, and he says,
Right.
"Was it here?" And he's like, "You don't want to know. You know, yeah, Vigo's son took it." And then you find out that he's like, it was Vigo's son, and then we kind of go back and forth.
Right.
And
he gets another car, I think, from
from John Leguizamo, and
that's one thing. Like, I feel like I don't like know a lot about cars, so like I feel like there's all these impressive cars. I'm like, well, I don't know.
Yeah. And
I'm sure if I knew what cars were, I'd be
well,
impressed.
And what I kind of like is, what I like about it is so he goes to see his father. Vigo does.
Oh yeah.
And then there's Yusuf. Yeah, Yusuf.
Right.
And Yusuf is like, he's like going, and Yusuf's right hand man is Mayhem.
Oh, and Vigo's like right hand.
Yeah, who's the father?
Vigo.
Vigo's right hand man is
State Farm.
No, not State Farm.
Not State Farm.
Allstate, the Mayhem, where he's like, I'm your windshield wiper. I just went, and if you have great coverage, and you're like going, well, and then I want to just talk about him for a second. I actually watched, so on Amazon Prime, they had the Law and Order SVU couple. He's actually in the first season. He actually is a big player in the first season of Law and Order SVU. And so, I mean, I guess he sort of had that role, and he's done pretty well. So you know him,
right?
So he's like going, so then Yusuf's the father?
No, Vigo.
So Vigo is like going, he's like going, I heard you, or he's saying to like, what's his name? Yusuf. That's like, you killed his dog. Or is it? So Vigo basically says that, I knew how, he tells the backstory of John Wick. Yeah. And how he's basically like, he's the guy he's the guy that kills the boogeyman.
Right.
Is the one that the boogeyman's afraid of.
And he's like doing this all the while, sort of like while punching his son.
Yeah. And then he's bleeding on the floor, and he's like, clean it up, and he throws him.
I think he punches him and he throws up.
He punches him, he throws up, and he cleans it up. And what was your thought? And then, what were your thoughts on Vigo as a character, or the father?
I like Vigo's character, the father. He's sort of angry Russian mobster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's got a little bit of a class to him, or not class, but style.
Yeah, style. No, I liked his character. I thought it was, I don't know, he played it well. I felt like.
Yeah.
And like he always he killed him with a pencil.
He just talks about he stabbed him with the pencil. With a pencil,
Right.
And you're like going, and then what's funny is when you get to the second one, he actually kills somebody with a pencil.
What?
So I watched them all last night, or
right.
I'm still on the third one. I think I just finished the third one. Anyway.
Okay.
But let's go back to the first one.
And I think so. As this scene's gone, I think this is the scene where he goes down to the garage.
He goes down to the garage. He takes the sledgehammer.
Right.
And he and what I like about it is when I think it symbolizes him getting back into the game.
Yeah, it was sort of he's literally digging up his past.
Digging up, yeah, that's where I was going with. Because he takes the sledgehammer, and as this is going, he basically gives us the backstory
it's got
of how
cool speech, he's a man of pure focus,
will, and he's going, and he had a wife, or he got out of the game because of a girl, and I gave him this impossible mission, and as this is going on, he's basically getting his stuff out of the thing, concrete. He's getting the suits. He's got a bunch of guns
and gold coins.
Well, the gold coins mean something,
right? Yeah, we find out later.
And he's got all these gold coins, and so he's puts on the suit, and then and then after he tells him the story, he Mayhem and the Russian mob gangster, they put on a hit for John Wick, like a $10 million hit.
I think it was $5 million.
$5 million, whatever. It's a lot of money.
Right.
And so these guys all come after him, and he's sitting there, and he looks like he's got a glass full of Cavassier or something, some sort of liquor, and he's basically going. He's talking about the boogie. He's like in like Spanish or Russian, talking about the boogeyman.
Yeah, the Baba Yaga.
Baba Yaga, and then he's like going, but going back, did we talk about how, Peter, or he says he's the boogeyman, and he's like, no, he's the guy you kill, who kills the boogeyman.
Yeah, you call to
have boogeyman killed. And I mean, I like that. I mean, what was your thoughts? Just because I kind of want to get this more as a perspective.
Yeah, I like that was one of the best scenes in the movie. I feel like where he's sort of just describing how scary John Wick was.
And he takes a shower, and you see he's got all these this back tattoo.
Right.
And and I liked what they did but I liked how that started, or how he goes from, getting dressed, and Keanu Reeves looks, it's kind of like that line in Anchorman where he says he's got suits so fine, he makes Sinatra look like a hobo. Remember that line in Anchorman?
Yeah.
But what I did like how he kind of, so like where we're at now in the film is he's getting his suit, and these men are all coming.
Right.
And then that's where the action begins. So let's go into the action, because that's what you came for.
Right. Yeah. So like the Vigo sent like this whole like hit squad sort of to his house to try to get him.
And they came in like, what I like about it is they come from like the back. And you kind of like, and he's saying all this stuff about the boogeyman comes and things, and then I mean the fighting is just so.
Yeah, it's like.
It kind of reminds you of the Jason Bourne fighting a little bit, but a little bit. It's
more elegant. I feel like it's like the camera's not as shaky.
Yeah, you're right.
But it's got like that it's still brutal, but it's like elegant and brutal at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it was sort of like. Watching it, I was like, where he's like, and like, when we would get into it, when he goes and hunts Vago down, this is the Yusuf down, and they're like, he's like shooting all these guys up. They're playing music while they're doing like kind of like club music, or not club music, but sort of like calming.
Yeah, it's very, it doesn't super match the tone, but it just works.
It just works. But that's the same thing when let's go into the house.
Yeah.
Where the house, he basically is shooting, or it's like, so it's like they're all coming, and then he's got like these guns, and then they start just going for it, and he just and Keanu Reeves just shoots and does all this kind of moves.
He just, and it's like also at the same time, it's just like brutal, like like shoots him in the head after he like knocks him down.
Knocks him down. Well, and then he shoots him like that, like shoots him through the mouth, I think. And I mean, and that's when the energy takes. I think this film really, when you look at it, kind of how it kind of goes from wife died, gets a dog.
To like this first fight scene.
Well, he gets beaten up.
Right.
And then you find out he's an assassin. And then the first fight scene, then you're like, okay, now we're in the action. Yeah, like now we're ready to go. Hold on. Let's see if it'll. It's still. I don't know. Okay. Hold on. Yeah, I think we're good. I think it just lags a little bit.
Okay.
But because we've got Anyway, sorry about that. I kind of liked how they, that's how the film kind of takes off. And that fight scene where he's just like shooting people.
Right.
And do you remember any of the move? Like, kind of.
I can't remember. I mean, he's like,
I know
he's
he
always
does
like throwing people over and like, I don't know, like.
There's a fight at like the balcony.
Uh-huh.
And he throws some people down. And I watched these last night. And it's kind of interesting when you watch them, how that first one just feels sort of like a commute, like the fight scene, like it sort of works where it sort of slowly builds.
Right.
But so he fights all these guys.
Yeah.
And then he fights all these guys. It's an amazing shot. And then
it's like the house is dark and like there's just like flashlights illuminating, and then suddenly you see like the police lights.
Police lights come up, and he knocks on the door, and he's like, "Evening, Evening, John." He says, "Evening, Jimmy. You back in the?" And he's like, "You been working again?" And he's like, "No."
And he said he's like, "What is it? Just cleaning some stuff."
Just sorting stuff out. And what I like about it is that it does take that tongue-in-cheek kind of tone where it kind of goes from, like bam, 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 and then kind of it's fun, but it's not. It doesn't. It's kind of the same. It doesn't try to tickle your funny bone, but it works. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So he calls his. So after the fight, which is amazing, and the police officer Jimmy showing up.
Right.
He gets a call, so he calls his.
Makes a dinner reservation.
He makes a dinner. Makes it was it Sal?
I can't remember the name.
And these guys come in, and they're basically like the they're like the
cleaning
up crew
for
the bodies. So he's like going, and I like it because, what he's like going, "Hey Sal," and he's like, "Hey John, I heard you're back in the game." And he's like going, "Just sorting some stuff out." And so they like wrap all these, like mummify all these dead bodies.
And they like stack them up. There's like at least like 12.
12 of them. And then like they clean the blood off the windows and doors and like really makes everything nice. And he's like, "How much are you going to bill? How much should I bill you?" And he's like, "Oh, don't worry about it." And he gives him a gold coin.
I think he gives them. I think it's like a 1 coin for each person.
Yeah.
I think maybe.
Yeah, I think it's something.
But this is like the first time we see the coins being exchanged for. I think in the movie.
Yeah, and so then he gets. So then he.
I think he goes to the hotel next.
Right? Yeah, the hotel. So he packs his bags and goes to the Continental.
Right.
Which is it's basically a hotel for assassins, but it's only you can't kill any.
It's like the church in Highlander. It's like neutral ground.
It's neutral ground. Okay, yeah. Okay, well I haven't seen. I need to see.
You haven't seen Highlander?
Well, okay, I know.
The greatest movie.
Greatest movie.
Have you seen Talladega Nights?
Yes.
Well, then you know it's the greatest movie ever.
Of all time. Okay, well. We'll do I'll see Highlander. I'll find it on Amazon or something. But so he goes to the hotel,
right?
And at the Continental, which is like I guess in downtown New York.
Yeah, I think New York. Yeah.
And he pulls up, and they have valet parking.
Right. Because I remember the license plate. I think John Wick is from New Jersey. So
New York. Okay. And then he meets the hotel manager Conan. Who makes?
Oh yeah, the concierge.
Concierge.
I don't think we learned his name in this movie.
Oh, okay, never mind. Well, his name's Lance Reddick.
Right.
Reddick.
No, but yeah, I love his character.
And he was in Godzilla vs. Kong.
Okay.
His other roles include White House Down which was
I haven't seen that one.
Which they had that one, and they had. Oh God, what was the other one? The Gerard Butler, Olympus Has Fallen film. But he's been in DuckTales. He was in all 3. So he makes an appearance in 2 and 3. And he was in Rick and Morty. And he was in Castle and The Blacklist and Jonah Hex. So he's been a lot of, I think, but this is one that I've kind of like found him in. But he plays the concierge, and he's like, "Hello, Mr. Wick, how are you?" And he's like going, I'm staying for a few nights. How many nights? Or he's like, how many nights are you staying? It's like about 2 nights, maybe longer. And he's like going, we've got a suite in the house. And then John Wick runs into Perkins.
Right.
Was it Perkins? And then so he gets to the hotel and gets everything set up. Vince.
I think where this is going, then Vigo. I think this is when he actually puts out the hit.
Vigo puts out the hit and says $10 million for John
break the rules.
To break the rules, and the rules are you can't fight anybody on.
You can't do like assassin.
You can't assassinate people on
at the assassin hotel.
And an assassination hotel. So yeah, so it's neutral ground, but okay, I got you.
So then he like goes. So inside the hotel's like its own little like speakeasy that he goes to, and that's where we meet the owner of the Continental.
Continental, played by Ian McShane. Ooh. And if you don't know Ian McShane, he was Blackbeard in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Okay.
He was also in He was also in Kung Fu Panda, Deadwood. He was in episodes of Law and Order SVU. Jack the Giant Slayer. He played Blackbeard in Pirates of the Caribbean. I think I told you that.
Yeah.
He was in Hot Rod. He played did you ever see Hot Rod?
I have, but I don't remember him.
He played the stepfather.
Oh.
And he's like, the stepfather that's like about to die, or and he's like going, I'm gonna get your heart transplanted so I can come back and kick your ass.
That's right.
He played Captain Hook in Shrek. He was in We Are Marshall. You know him. He played the villain in Agent Cody Banks.
Okay. Yeah, I can't remember, but he's a very he's
distinctive, and so he plays the owner of the hotel. And he basically tells them the rules of the world, of the setting, because he says that you've been here at the Continental, the rules are
can't do business,
right. but you can kind of tell that John Wick and him have some history together,
right?
And John's been John's been out of the game because he's gotten married,
right?
He had a wife, and he left that life behind,
right?
And I brought him back in, just like in Godfather 3. So, what's your thoughts on the hotel idea?
I love the whole just like I guess what would you call it? Their mythology, I guess, of the assassins. Yeah, how it's like it just slowly builds and builds. I really
and I like how and it's so slick.
Yeah.
Like it's got the style with John Wick, just the suits.
Uh-huh.
It's got that style, but I like the hotel and how it's so kind of modern but sort of old school at the same time.
Yeah.
And so he gets a room.
Right. And I think he really tries to find out where
Yusuf is.
Right. And I think we missed one scene with Marcus before this.
Okay.
Where I think that was it.
So
Vigo goes and sees Marcus.
Vigo sees
William
Dafoe?
Yeah, William Dafoe.
Marcus is William Dafoe.
Yeah, and he's like, he tells him I'm putting out a hit on John Wick that's open.
Yeah, open to anyone, and he's like, and that's Vigo's the son, Vigo's the father.
Yeah,
and he's giving him carrot juice, and he's drinking. He's like, I have a thing, and this is strictly off the contract, But will you kill John Wick for $10 million? And it's kind of like a Dr. Evil. It's almost like a Dr. Evil thing,
right?
And
then I think Marcus says yes to that scene, right?
Yeah.
And then he goes and opens up his staircase where Harry Potter would live, and he's got a bunch of guns.
Yes. And
He had like a big like sniper rifle.
Yeah, and he has like the sniper. Yeah. I kind of like and I kind of like how he's
And I think now we can jump back to this
so
the hotel scene where John Wick's like in bed.
So he's in bed. He's getting his arm. He got his arm. Fixed up. We're gonna go back a little bit. So he goes to find Winston, and Winston tells him that Yusef is
at this club,
the Red Circle. So he goes and he's like, "How do I find him?" He's at the Red Circle. So they go to this club, and this club's got like music, and so he goes to the club, and then we have this great shootout scene.
Right. I really like the scene before he gets in. Like he comes up to one of the guards like on the outside.
And he's like, oh, he goes, he gets to the club, and he goes in, and he's like, and he sneaks up behind one of the bouncers,
right?
And he's like going, hey, oh god, it's like, hey, Tyler.
Yeah, I knows his name like Bob or Billy.
Hey Bob.
Yeah, that's not it, but
anyway, he's just like going, and it's all in like Russian, I think, and he's like, heard you lost, heard you were back in the game. And then he says, yeah.
He's asking, are you working tonight?
And he's like, oh, yeah, afraid so.
Yeah, and he's like,
was it Francis, I think?
Maybe. But he's like, I think maybe one was Francis. He's like, why don't you take the night off?
Why don't you take the night off? And he's like, okay. And he takes off his earpiece and walks away. And he's like, have a good night. And he's like, all right, that's what I like.
I love that.
Because I think what this movie does is it's not like a parody where, like, you know how Scary Movie just sort of says, here's what we're satirizing, here's what we're satirizing, get it, but what I think this film does is we kind of know what world we're in, where they kind of like like it's kind of like the assassin's day job.
Right. It reminded me, I think is it an animated series of Batman where like one of like the normal like goons like opens up a doors and see Batman, and Batman just sort of like puts his finger up his mouth and like says like shush.
Yeah.
And like the goon just closes the door and like another person asks, "Do you see anything?" And the guy's just
nope. And that's kind of what it and that's kind of what it does.
Like he's like so scary, like he's like people just.
Yeah, and that's kind of thing with John Wick.
Right.
And I think what I like about this film, but I like about where they go into the nightclub is it's great. So I'm gonna build this up a little bit. So he's like going, I heard you've lost, and I like how he kind of ends up with, heard you lost weight. He's like 60 pounds, and he's like going, oh, you're gonna look good, And then he goes into the club, and the club's like got all these blue lights and this music playing, and then it like kind of like this like club music playing, and then Yusef,
I think he's down in the basement.
He's down in the basement at the bathhouse in like the hot tub, and they're like drinking like champagne and hanging out, and they're like, give me another bottle, and then I guess one of his father's bodyguards shows up and says, you shouldn't be down here. And he's like going, why? Are you afraid of the boogeyman? I'm not. Because, he's still a cocky little prick.
Right.
And he says, he's like, no, but you should be. And he grabs, like, oh, sorry. He says, no, but you should be. And so then he comes in. And it's nice and slow because you have like that music playing in the background, and he like shoots these guys.
Yeah. Shoot. I think first he like finds like one of his Yusuf's friends in the bathroom and like sort of like drowns him in the sink. Like he's like, "Where's Yusuf?" And he's like, "Fuck you, asshole!" And he's like, "Oh yeah," and he grabs him and he drowns him in the sink. And what I like about it is and then he goes into a shootout, or no. And then he's walking, and there's like music he,
playing.
Almost gets up to Yusuf like close enough, and then someone spots him.
And then Yusuf runs.
and it's this like crazy chase
shootout, and like, fights. But I like how like the music changes from like this nice calm music to like, you know, to like, kind of thing. What was your thought? Like, what was your thought when you were watching the John Wick, or like that scene?
This scene is pretty amazing. It's like the lighting, like the choreography, and just like the fight scenes. Just because it's like he starts out in the basement of this club, and like you just chasing Yusuf like up the stairs, like to all these different levels of the club.
And I like how it's like levels and it's this. I want to say this before we go on is what I like about John Wick. John Wick is like a film, kind of is a film that is just, I don't know if I saw this at like 8 or 9, how much I'd be like, oh, it's so like, if I would feel more taboo watching it, or because it was so violent.
Right.
But I mean, I liked pretty much everything. I liked how it is, how it works. But what I kind of like in that film scene is where it builds up, because it starts where he kind of like kills the guy in the locker room, kills his friend in the locker room, and then he finds him, shoots, gets everybody out of the pool, and he chases him through the club. And the club scene I love the club scene because I love the lights. I love how it kind of like it kind of plays with the music, and how like he's walking around doing, or he's kind of walking around chasing him through the thing, and everybody's running, screaming and hollering, and then he gets to the thing. He runs out, gets into the limo or the cab or something, and he's like, drive, and then he calls his friend who he, I guess, killed in the
very beginning. Yeah.
Well, he killed him at the club.
Yeah, in the bathroom. He's the first person he killed.
That's the one he drowned, right?
Yeah.
So he took
his phone.
And he took his phone, and he's like going, Yusuf, are you there? Or I can't remember his name. Are you there? And he's like, no, this is John Wick. He's dead. Everyone has a price, bitch. And it's because, but I think that's what makes this movie so great is it starts out with mild-mannered Peter Parker or John Wick, and then it builds up. And then it kind of really builds its own mythology once you get to the second and third one. Right. But, so after he kills them all.
Yeah, well, during this fight, he also gets the main bodyguard, I think, like, throws John Wick off like a balcony onto the main dance.
Oh, and he just, like, falls, and he gets back up and just shoots him right in the face. And, like, I mean, the choreography is just something, and I think the director of this was a stunt coordinator for the Matrix movies. So I kind of think that they really know what they're doing, Yeah,
it's like he sort of like fails at this first attempt, and I think he gets stabbed during this too, right? I think. And I think he like hurts his arm with a fall.
Yeah, because he goes back to the Continental, and the doctor has to patch him up. Right. But yeah, he falls and kind of, because remember he's limping, and after he's like, Yusuf, are you there? Right. Like, Yusuf's dead, or Yeah, and everyone has a car.
He sort of like retreats back to the hotel for the night.
And then he's like, and he likes to drink his bourbon, and he's sitting on a thing, and the doctor, who's played by the Keymaker from the Matrix. I didn't realize that until I watched the second one, or the third one, and I was like, God, he sounds so familiar. And it's like, oh, that's the Keymaker from the Matrix. So
yeah, he gets patched up, and he gets some I forget pills to take to keep going.
Yeah, he says, I know you really your stitches will tear and you'll bleed, but you'll live. He's like, take these pills every 6 hours or.
Right. Oh, sorry. What were you going to say?
You go ahead.
No, I was just continuing with the plot.
Yeah. Well, I was kind of thinking, what was your thoughts on just how the way, like the hotel, kind of what was your thoughts on sort of how because like the hotel is sort of like, just kind of the environment.
Yeah, it's sort of like. I feel like each time you come back to the hotel, it sort of like expands. Like
the mythology.
First time was like the rules and like the little speakeasy. Now like it's got the doctor.
Yeah.
It's in house. And I just sort of like it keeps expanding. And then like as you go on to the next movies, I think it keeps expanding.
And kind of knows where it's going. And what I like about John Wick or this first one is I like how it kind of moves, but it keeps your attention. Throughout the film. I mean, it's not dull where it's like action, 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 dull, action, action, action. It just keeps it's action, right. but the dialogue works and everything. And then, so he's lying in bed, he's about to fall asleep.
And then I think we see him through the scope of Marcus's sniper.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh no, is Marcus gonna shoot him?
Yeah. Well, see that was something that I think I've watched it a couple times, but. For a first time, it's probably like, oh no, Marcus turned bad or whatever.
Or like he's just like in it for the money.
Yeah, and then you find out that it's
Perkins.
And Perkins is played by.
So like Perkins breaks in, and then we see that Marcus is just using his sniper rifle to sort of watch over John Wick, sort of like his like guardian angel.
Perkins is played by Adrian Pilecki, who was Wonder Woman in the failed 2011 show we talked about on the DC thing.
Okay.
So she was on that, and she's also been in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and G.I. Joe Retaliation with The Rock.
Okay.
So anyway, but I didn't know that until I kind of like to kind of know who the Troy McClure kind of thing. But anyway, I liked how she's like, "Hey John, how are ya?" Right. And he's like, "Perkins." And she's like going, fancy seeing you here, and
right,
I heard you. And she says something like, I know, I'm sorry about your wife, because right. I guess it's sort of known that he got out of the game and married, and
this scene, is it Mr. and Mr. Smith scene?
Kind of,
where they kind of like talking while fighting.
That was kind of like. Are you alright, baby? Yeah, well, it kind of does remind me of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I didn't notice that.
Right.
Good observation, Shay.
Yeah.
So the fight, and what did you think of the fight between her and John in the?
It was still good. Like it's still, nothing sort of beats that first club scene with like if we were gonna rank the fight scene.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it worked. I mean, I thought it was, I like how it was just sort of, kind of, right. kind of remind me of that scene, and when he gets out, like when he beats her up, and and then the guy, he's like, Harry. Yeah, Harry's sitting. Neighbor wakes his roommate comes in and says, "John, what are you doing here?" Or it's like, I heard you're back in town. And he's like, "Yeah, Harry, I'm back, and so I heard you didn't like retiring,
Right. There's the banter.
The banter works. I think that's what makes this film, I think, work, is that it doesn't have this sense of villain, like it runs its own gamut.
Right. Yeah, and so I think then he says, so the next morning, I think there's right then or the next morning, he's like, "Hey, do you want to earn a coin to Harry?" Is this what Harry tells? Yeah, for Harry to watch Perkins.
And
he doesn't kill Perkins.
Yeah, and so they basically handcuff her to the chair. And Harry basically says, he's
going to leave her for the management to find. But I guess before this, John gets like a piece of information from her that Vigo keeps all his money at this church.
Church, you're right.
Right.
And we can get to the church scene in a second, but what I like is where he's like, where she's basically like, so she's like handcuffed to the chair, and he's like going, management will find you, and then she does this thing with her finger,
breaks her hand
to get out of the handcuffs, and she gets
shoots Harry.
Shoots Harry, and then
she's like, "Don't worry, man." She says the same thing to him after he's dead.
Don't worry, yeah. And I was kind of like, why did they kill Harry? Because Harry was so cool.
I liked him too. But they gotta show how mean
she is. I know. I was like, So then they go to
John Wick's off to the church.
Okay. So he goes to the church, and this church is pretty much the priest is giving like mass, and he's like, my child, what are you?
And then he's like walks up with a shotgun.
Was it a shotgun?
I think it was a shotgun.
Or a machine gun. No, it was like a machine gun.
Okay, I can't remember.
And he's like, shoots him in the leg, and she's like, what the hell are you doing? And he's like, take me to the vaults, and then the vault's basically underneath the church.
Yeah.
And the vault pretty much has a bunch of cash.
Yeah, it was like his like private bank sort of.
Yeah. And what I liked about that scene was he shoots him, like, and it's sort of like, it's like, okay, John comes into the church and shoots him, and then he kind of and then you're like going, okay, why would he shoot a priest?
Right.
And then you find out that the priest has got like a vault, and he's got a bunch of people working for him. That,
it's like up front. It wasn't a real church. It was like, oh, that's where we deposit our money. And I don't like that. And he shoots and he like tells all the women to get out. Yeah. And then he sort of sets all the money, everything in the vault on.
Oh, yes. Okay. So what I liked about that is that he's like going, she's like, what are you going to do? You can't, everyone's after you. And I'm going to do this. And he grabs like a sparkler thing and throws it, and all the money and the guns blow up. And
the scene sort of reminded me a lot of like like the Joker from like The Dark Knight, where he like, they go to the bank and he shoots like, don't you know who I work for? Because I think the priest sort of says the same thing.
Kind of says the same thing.
And then he burns the money.
But it kind of has this kind of the same thing where he's like, I'm gonna send him a message, that kind of thing.
Right.
I like that because I mean, I watched I liked what they did with where and then I liked how you see them burn, and he's like, I'm gonna do this, and he burns the money down.
Right.
And then
so then he's using this to sort of lure Vigo out. So he's like watching from a rooftop.
Vigo's the dad.
Yeah.
So Vigo's like, John. I
remember. So Vigo like pulls up to the church. Sure. And we see so John's looking from like the rooftop with like a
sniper,
some
with
sort
a
of
scope.
Yeah. And then we see Vigo pull up and then immediately like shoot the priest. Remember the priest is like, no, you can't let you open the vault because Vigo will kill me. And then Vigo shows up and does kill him.
Yeah. And he's like, John. One second. This thing's okay. We're good. I don't know why it does that. Anyway.
Because I think John has like a firefight with Vigo and his bodyguard.
And he's like, John, and he's like kind of pulls out a white hanger. He doesn't pull out but he kind of does the like, John, we can work this out.
Right. Well, yeah. He gets captured for a second too, though.
Yeah. And so John's sitting there, and he's like, so they knock out John and wake him up.
And I think this is. Of course, later on in the movie, I think this is the first time he gets hit by a car.
Yeah, he gets hit by a car, and it's amazing.
Later on, I think he gets hit by more. Like, I don't know. I feel like we'll get there 2 and 3, but After we need to keep like a number of times he gets hit by a car.
Yeah, we need like a tally marker just to see
how many times he falls off. So he's fallen off like one floor building.
Yeah,
and he's gotten hit by one car.
Yeah, and we're not counting the fact that he got hit by a bat too.
No, that's just normal fight. This is like falling off like high places and cars.
Yeah.
Later on, turned to be his greatest weakness.
And he's like, so they knocked John. So they kind of say John. And they kind of have this like nice. It's not really interrogation. It's just a conversation, where it's like, I heard. He still gives him his condolences about his wife, and he's like going, you kill. He's like going, people. Before that, Yusef.
Wait, Vigo's the guy.
Vigo. Vigo says, John, what have you, you've been, really giving me a hard time, hard time, you need to just get back to retirement. I'm sorry about your dog. I'm sorry about your wife. And he's like going, so you're saying that, Vigo, this is the lyrics that what he says. So he's like talks to him while he's while he's interrogating him. Basically, he says Vigo, and Vigo says yeah. John says, when Helen died, I lost everything until that dog arrived on my doorstep. A final gift from my wife. In that moment, I received some semblance of hope, an opportunity to grieve unalone, and your son took that from me. Oh God. Stole that from me. Killed that from me. This is a great line. People have been asking if I'm back, and I haven't really had an answer. But now, I'm thinking I'm back. So you can either hand over your son, or you can die screaming alongside him. And I'm like, that scene was just like, you were like, what was your kind of take on that?
For me, I sort of didn't like this scene personally.
What did you like? I didn't like it. I didn't like. How come?
I don't know. For me, I guess his little speech sort of fell flat for me in a way.
I felt like I feel like I can kind of see that. For me, I feel like it builds something up.
Right.
I thought, I'm like, it's sort of that kind of, it's kind of like that action moment where I feel like, when you look at John Wick versus like another action film where, like a Schwarzenegger film, right. Schwarzenegger will say something like, nice to see, he has those puns. And Keanu Reeves kind of has the pun, but it builds up.
Right.
Whereas, he's like going, when he says, people have been asking if I've been back, and I got to tell them, I've been feeling it. Yeah, I'm back. That kind of thing. And you kind of know, and so basically they try to suffocate him with a bag.
And it looks pretty hopeless.
But then John...
Then the Green Goblin,
William Dafoe.
Yeah, his guardian angel shoots one of the guys with his sniper rifle. And John is able to sort of get out and fight his way out.
And John is basically like fighting, and he's fighting his way out, and and it's like this amazing action side.
Right.
It kind of reminds me of that line. It kind of reminds me of But it's not. The thing I like about that scene though is that I can kind of see, how I think if Keanu Reeves didn't have that, I wouldn't say charm, but more attitude, it could have sounded really flat.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
Like it could have been kind of like, when you have a line, when you see your characters, like, I'll give you an example. You know how Jim Carrey does the claw in Liar Liar and like really commits, and then As You Wish, the stepdad or the boyfriend
tries to do it.
oh, look, son, the claw. And that's kind of how I look at how, you can really do a action scene, really kind of Schwarzenegger can bring it
Right.
to, or, even, and I think this film really kind of, well, I feel like The Matrix really brought Keanu Reeves into, he could be an action star, but John Wick brings him into, he can be an action star, but he can bring that attitude without being phony.
Right.
So anyway, so he basically, takes down all these guys.
Yeah.
And they suffocate, after him suffocating and.
Yeah, I think I guess where he gets out and sort of takes out the few remaining guards, Vigo's guards, and he sort of has Vigo like at gunpoint, and this is where he gets Vigo to turn over his son.
And his son is basically, where's his
son's at this other. Vigo tells
me
he's at
his
the
son's
safe
playing
house.
video games at the safe house playing video games.
His friend's playing Halo.
Yes, and he's like going, and then he's like his friends like playing the game and going, what are you so worried about? And he's like and he's looking outside, and then John Wick shows up.
Right, I think he shows up with another like sniper rifle this time and starts picking people off.
Picking people off one by one, right.
And you see like his friend playing the game, and suddenly he's just like
and he's like playing it, and then he falls forward, doesn't he?
Yeah, like he just gets shot through the head.
Shot through the head, and I mean, what was your thoughts on just the way the way the shots were filmed?
Yeah.
Like the shooting scene.
Yeah, so this one was a lot more like almost like no mercy type thing. It's like very, because like even like he goes through and like shoots a lot of people like just with a sniper rifle, and then sort of just comes up to Yusuf.
Yeah.
And Yusuf's like, it's just a dog, and he's just like, there's no like long
speed. There's no speed. There's no like. Yeah, he just shoots it. It's just a fucking dog, and he just. And then he goes and finds the dad.
Well, no, and then he goes out. So like Vigo, is really upset that he's has killed his son, and then I guess at this point also. Trying to remember what happened. I think Perkins follows John and sees John talking with Marcus.
Right.
And so then now Vigo knows that Marcus was helping John.
Right.
And so Vigo shows up and sort of like
kills
Marcus.
Right. And then they have that song. But I like what they do, because I always kind of feel like when you watch a film, music can really make it take the pain, because like you look at the song, because I think it's sang by Avalon, who did that song do sail do. But they did a song in this one where it's like I'm good at that.
I can't remember.
I know the song, but they kill Marcus, William Dafoe's character.
Right. Because I think originally John Wick was like, I'm not going to go after the dad, I was just after the son.
Yeah.
But as soon as the dad kills Marcus, now it's like he's going to go after the dad.
Yeah. And then so he goes after Marcus.
Right.
And he's like, and he's got the AK-4 or like a power gun.
Machine gun.
Machine gun. Yeah. And he's like shooting, and he's like, John. Did we get to the?
That's where he told him where his son was. Yeah. He had like that shotgun thing.
Yeah, that shotgun.
Yeah.
And then where were we?
So he's like, he's killed the son, and so Vigo has killed Marcus, and then after that, I think then we see Perkins. I think does Winston call Perkins off to get?
Yeah.
And she gets like surrounded by a bunch of
yes.
It's like a little bit more mythology of like the hotel.
The hotel, and I think and then Ian McShillen, the hotel owner.
Right.
I can't remember his name.
Winston.
Winston's like your reservations have been revoked at the Continental. I'm sorry. and then he walks away, and then they all kill her.
Yeah, and like 8 people show up and shoot her all at the same time.
Shoot her all at the same time. That's amazing.
And this is when then also now we get a little bit hint. I think Winston calls John and like, something like, this is some, like gives him the tip that Vigo's like helicopter is about to take off.
Yeah.
I forget. And then John like rushes off towards the helipad.
I watched this all last night. I just wanted to...
And this is like sort of like the final confrontation with John and Vigo, like sort of, they have the big like car chase.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is where I don't think John wears a seatbelt. I can't remember if he wears a seatbelt throughout the whole movie.
John. Okay, so John gets in the car, right?
Right.
And he's driving.
Yeah. So he's like, and then it starts raining, and he's sort of like fights off his bodyguards one by one, and then I think I can't remember if he kills Mayhem or not.
I don't think
maybe he just knocks him out.
I think he knocks Mayhem. Yeah, and it's great. I mean, what were your thoughts on just the cinematography and the action?
No, it was good, and like they sort of very like throwback to the Matrix. For now, it's like it's got like the full rainstorm. It's like, and then it's
from like the third one.
Yeah, and then it's got Vigo and John Wick are fighting. Like he says like no guns. And
no
guns.
Just
have, like, a
yeah, and
fight.
it kind of but I think it's done better, way better than the Matrix. I don't know. I think that's CGI, because if you watch it's not as cartoonish looking.
Right.
I guess is what I was.
Yeah, I guess it's true. It's more less style. Like it's Matrix is almost like all stylish, and this is more stylish and brutal.
So then he gets then after he fights him, and he's like, John, and he leaves him there.
Right. Well, he gets stabbed. Like he lets Vigo stab him, and then he grabs the knife and then stabs him back.
Yeah. And then I just remember he goes to the pound, and he gets another dog.
Right. And then we're sort of back. So we're back to the very beginning of the movie where he sort of he crawls out of the SUV. Is that he was in front of a pound where he gets
yeah. And then he's like, "Come on, let's go home."
Right.
And he and the dog walk off, and then
this is something I didn't think about until we watched it last week. Was that like a vet or like a pound? Because there's a lot of medical I
think it was a vet. I think
it was a vet. That was probably.
I think
he steal someone's dog?
I don't know. I think it was a pound that probably had like a vet. Let's just say it's a pound that has like a vet that's just there to make sure the dogs are taken care of.
Because if it's like a vet, that means he probably stole someone's dog.
Yeah, probably.
But if it's a pound, maybe it's better.
Let's see. What was your? I guess since we just went through the film, let's talk about how would you rate this on a scale from 1 to 10?
Are we rating just action movies or all movies? I guess.
Okay, we'll rate in three things: all movies, action movies, and keanue.
Okay.
Keanue or keanue? Was it a keanue?
This is a keanue. Yeah.
This is keanue. Thumbs up. All right, so we got that. Action movies. What would you rate it as?
Action. This is like a 9.
9.
9 to 10. Action.
If you were at the video store and you had between Die Hard, The Matrix, or John Wick, which one would you? Or you could rent 3, but you had to watch them in 3 different orders. Which would be?
Okay, for me, I guess I'm a lot of all things sci-fi. So The Matrix still wins, but then John Wick and then Die Hard.
Okay, so you do 2 Keanu's and a Bruce Willis.
What about you?
I probably would do John Wick first, The Matrix, and then Die Hard. I think, but Die Hard is one of those films that just, I think kind of. But if you look at I'm going to go in a little bit of a thing where, okay, if you look at Die Hard pretty much puts John McClane into the situation. Same way Jurassic Park. John Wick. It's sort of like, if you look at Die Hard. At least the opening. Die Hard is basically him going to the video or going to the party, and then terrorists take over. And then he's like, oh, I'm a cop. And he just kind of thinks on his feet. But it sort of slowly builds up. And you look at John Wick. At the beginning, he's basically it kind of slowly builds to him being an assassin.
Right.
It sort of says, my daughter or my wife died. They gave me a dog. I love that dog. They killed that dog.
I killed him.
I killed him. But but like with Die Hard, it's sort of like I'm at this party, terrorists take over, and then I put into action.
I've got to save the day. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I like John. I think I watched all three of them. I didn't really watch the third one. Yeah, but I've watched the first two, and I think it plays great as a piece.
No, yeah.
As a trilogy or as a quadrilogy.
I'm sure we'll talk about this later. I love how it just sort of it just picks up right off the first one.
With the second one?
And especially just the pacing of the movie. It's there's no week later, month later. It's this happened this day, and then it's the next day. It's very, things happen fast.
And I think if you watch, I actually watched just because I knew we were gonna do this podcast tonight. I kind of watched 1 and 2 back to back just to kind of get used to it. But I like this movie. I'll give it on my scale. I'd give it from one I'd put it as an action film, probably 80, 90. Put in the 90s. Yeah. I think this is the best one out of the
trilogy.
I think so, but I think because there's not that much lore to it.
Right.
It's very simple. You didn't put so much mythology into it. But that's, I guess, our review of John Wick. Jay, what would you before we end? What would you give it from a scale? Where would you put it? The percentage? Was it a 90?
For an action movie, this is a 9 out of 10. It's one of the better ones that I've seen in a couple of years.
Oh yeah,
if it was up for compared to just all Oscar, I'd maybe 7 or 8. Maybe probably 8.
8. Okay.
Yeah, because it's good.
Yeah, then I think they all. But I think it's not I feel like it's so fresh.
Right. Yeah. If you're if you're wanting to watch an action movie, this is one of the best ones.
Well, yeah, and it's so fresh because it doesn't start with just. It kind of opens and ends in kind of the same way, but yeah, that's I guess our talks on John Wick. We'll come back next time for John Wick Chapter 2. Where Lawrence Fishburne's coming back.
I love his character.
So and he's like John Wick.
I almost like the the second one just because the craziness of
yeah. This one's more and we'll end on this one. I feel like this one, I think it has to
much more straightforward.
Well, it's much more straightforward, but it also has to reel people in.
Right. Because
I feel like you watch something and it's kind of like in Die Hard. I think, because Die Hard starts with, it's a Christmas party, it's a party at the thing, terrorist attack.
Right.
John Wick goes into John McClane. There's
John
a movie.
Wayne.
John McClane and John Wick in the same movie. No.
What about John Wayne?
John Wayne. I don't know. But that's the thing. It sort of slowly builds up and then gets to the climax. But yeah, I give it out of my thing, I would give it maybe a 9.8 or 10.
Okay, yeah.
Just because I think they all work in a level. I guess our next video will be on the sequel, John Wick Chapter 2. And I hope you guys enjoy. Please subscribe. Thank you.